mock interview candidate that we have this week is a vice president level person looking for a role in data science in very, very big tech, like the best of the best companies, highly credentialed, highly talented individual who's looking for a little bit of prep work. You can use the chapters below to jump around and see what my feedback was, or actually listen to the whole interview if you want. I'm going to read you what I would have read into the room for the candidate had I been on the interview loop to kind of give you a sense of the outcome so you can decide if this is worth sticking around for. So the question I asked was to talk about a candidate that they had hired and what they saw in them during the interview loop that made them think that they were special or unique. And this falls under the category of hire and develop the best. And the feedback that I wrote for this candidate after this interview was, raising the bar for a company as a leader requires the ability to operationalize the process by which the talent is identified and grown. The candidate failed to materialize this categorization of their work with regard to the highlighted team member. Most notable was the continued altitude being way too high for any serious evaluation of an executive level candidate, without any anchoring content demonstrating a repeatable process other than nods to company level principles. It would be very difficult to advocate for this candidate based on what they demonstrated that they had mastery of hire and develop the best. And so the key here is, if you're going to stick around for the whole of the video, there is a danger and a trap, especially senior level folks fall into, where they try to remain above the fray, a little too detached from the details because they want to communicate quickly, and maybe they think they're being effective with short, concise communications, and that is not what you want to be doing in your interview. Your job is to win the interview. Your job is to win the job. To convince me that you can do the role. And by remaining above the fray, that might work in your organization where it's like, yeah, let's just get to the, whatever and stay high level and move on. Cool. But in this room where you and I have just met, and maybe we're going to spend 45 to 60 minutes together for an executive level, really senior level hire, boy, remaining high level tells me sometimes I might conclude that you're not doing the work on your team, that you're just kind of a delegator and managing, which in some organizations that's fine and that works. But is that really what this person wanted to communicate? And based on what I know of their work history, no, that's not what they wanted to communicate. Based on what I know of where they were trying to go to, no, that's not what they wanted to communicate. But unfortunately, that is what gets communicated, and you'll kind of see how that plays out over the course of this interview. If you want to support the channel or you want to work with me, I have the links below for how you can sign up for a VIP interview, or you can try any of the software that I've built to help you go through your interview process just a little bit easier. If you look back on your career, let's actually just constrain this the last 5 years, 10 years, and you reflect on the best hire you've ever made, right? This is a person that you decide to hire within your organization. I'd like to talk about an example of, and if you could think of 3 or 4 people, that's fine, just pick one. Someone who you consider one of the best hires of your career. And first things first, and I'll have follow-on questions, is, why do you feel that this person was one of your best hires?
Great. Yeah, I'm thinking of a particular example, and I think what this individual has done really well is role model the values and approaches and best practices of the organization, and really helped us towards the overall mission and vision that we're striving to realize the power of data science towards driving customer success on the cloud. And so in particular, being able to take what our stakeholders are asking for and actually transform that into really what they want and what they need, because sometimes our stakeholders might ask for a specific data point. They're not aware of all the tools in the tool belt within data science, for example, that we and more effectively. And so I felt like this individual has done a good job of striving of accomplishing that.
One of the biggest challenges that you can have in an interview, especially the more senior you are, is being above the fray, right? Being too vague. And when you're too vague, you're unintentionally communicating, potentially, depending on how my day as the interviewer is going, that you're not really engaged, or you're not really a lively personality, or maybe not even just someone I want to work with. It's not a good fit, right? Fit is always something we hear about in interviews. And in this first answer, I asked very specifically, tell me about a person who's been a great hire. I don't know what the role of the person was. I don't know when they hired them. I don't know what specifically they did that made them a great hire. It's a very high level, very vague answer, which it could signal a little bit of disengagement in the interview. It could also be a function of, as a candidate, you're afraid of saying too much, where you're afraid of revealing either personally identifiable information, unlikely, or kind of confidential secrets about someone who worked with you. And the challenge with that kind of invading your thoughts is that you're in the short window of time that we have together. What you communicate is all I have to evaluate you on as the interviewer. And if you stay very, very high level, it's somewhat challenging to feel good about you as a candidate, specifically if you're a much more senior level person, which this candidate was. They were going for a very senior role. And so it just, we'll see how it develops over the course of the answer, but it can be a bit tricky.
As the requests have come through.
Okay. And so how is this person's career, I guess, progress? Like, just how did this person's career progress while working directly for you or within your team? How has it tracked?
Right. Yeah. He started as a individual, a senior data scientist, and he's, continued to grow in his career levels. He also grew in terms of leadership to a tech lead, and then a people manager as well. And, being able to speak up on the leadership team. Those are a few ways he's grown in the organization.
Again, on this one, it's just non-specific. Like, what role do they have? They were senior data scientist. Okay, but like that wasn't really the question. It was like, how did their career progress? They were senior data scientists and they got promoted. There's not a whole lot of answer there, right? So you're trying to win the opportunity to work at this company that you're interviewing with. So if you're going to answer as if you're on the witness stand and they say, "What time is it?" Or do you know what time it is? Yes. Okay, what time is it? Like, if you're going to make me pull everything out of you, man, that's going to get tiresome real fast. And I, as the interviewer, I'm just going to be like, all right, cool. And I'll continue to ask my questions, but I've mentally checked out and I'm moving on to the next candidate. So I will try again in the follow-up question here to kind of pull more information out, but I think you'll see the kind of trend here of someone just remaining a little too high level throughout the interview, and it just doesn't land. So what are they doing now?
So this individual is currently a manager on my leadership team.
This manager still within your team, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing now? They're a leader on my team. Oh boy. So again, like, you have to, like, a thing that I talk about all the time is you want the interview to feel like a conversation. It is up to you, the candidate, to try and create this relationship with the person who's interviewing you, so they walk out of the room and they say to themselves, yes, I already feel like I work with this person. So absolutely, I wholeheartedly stand up for this person and root for this person and want them to work here. Let's go. When you answer in these kind of just short, clippy ways and a little high level, it just feels like the whole exercise of the interview is pulling teeth, which doesn't really work in your favor and can create a lot of challenges, especially if you get a more animated interviewer, which I tend to be, and more, I'm looking for that engagement because I'm trying to help folks, but this is generally how I ran my interviews. I want to have that back and forth. I don't want it to feel flat. I want you to leave the room ready to run through a door to work at the company. And so I'm continue to try to give the candidate opportunities across all the interviews, not just this one, opportunities to kind of fix broken answers. Sometimes they pick up on the cues and sometimes they don't. Reflecting on this person and their loop, kind of thinking back to their loop, what is it that you identified at the time of hiring in this person that gave you the confidence that they were going to be long-term successful within the organization?
Yeah. There were a couple of things. I mean, one was just that strong alignment, actually, in terms of both the skill set and the passion, in terms of having that toolbox of refined techniques that we would be able to leverage in these scenarios, both on the technical side, as well as just that strong passion to use that towards business scenarios, and also had an MBA, which I found the folks that I've hired with that tend to do well in terms of like the framing of the business questions that come in, which are often fairly ambiguous. So I think that combination, the passion, like both having the technical skill set and the passion towards the application, as well as even the soft skill aspects, those are actually the three buckets that I hire for, really stood out in terms of having the strengths in all three, which is kind of what we consider the data science unicorn, or the Conway Venn diagram that you might see for data science as well.
What values? What values did the candidate have? There was an alignment of values, but what values specifically? They had a toolbox of skills. What skills specifically? They had an MBA. This is actually a rare case where someone who has somewhat of an engineering background would say that an MBA has values, spoken as someone who has his MBA from almost 30 years ago. But it's actually quite rare in tech land now for people to say, oh, if you have an MBA, you actually have something to contribute. This is just another case of another follow-up answer that just high level, vague, non-specific, doesn't really answer the question, and ultimately leaves me wondering, like, how are you really evaluating candidates? I mean, she's talking about Venn diagrams of the buckets of the unicorn data scientist, but it's all somewhat glib in an analysis of a candidate. And me as the interviewer trying to figure out, how do you manage talent? It's like, oh, you're looking for alignment of values. Well, what does that actually mean? What are you looking for? Alignment how? In what way? What are they doing specifically? Oh, they have a toolbox of skills. Cool. What are they doing? What projects did they work on? What did they do specifically? Because the question was, what did you identify during their loop? What did they talk about? Can you talk about the loop? Can you talk about some of the things that came into the conversation with that candidate that had you saying, oh, this person's amazing. They clearly have a set of experiences, but the way that they break down problems and their database and their interrogation of their problem spaces, they love talking to customers. Like, these are all very specific things that you could talk about from the interview loop, but it's when you just say vague things like, well, alignment of values and toolbox. I, as the interviewer, now looking at you as someone who might be a leader on the team and who might be sitting in my seat, evaluating other candidates coming into the company, I start questioning whether or not you have the ability to do that. And so I would say, on the margin, across the entirety of the interview, the candidate did better, but on this specific question set, it was kind of a mess.